I think we're on.
And we're on.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And welcome to Are You There, God? It's Kira and Phil. I am Kira Austin Young, priest in charge of St. Anne's in Nashville, Tennessee, St. Anne's Episcopal Church.
And I am Philip DeVaul, rector of also an Episcopal Church, the Episcopal Church of the Redeemer in Cincinnati, Ohio, the Queen City of the Midwest. It's so good to be with you, Kira, today. I sent you one of our questions. We have a couple different questions from the same person.
Yeah.
And she deserves to be heard because she's been here for all of our shows.
And they are both very, very good questions.
They are good questions.
I do want to point out that we are not wearing our collars today.
How would you even trust us right now?
I know.
By what authority do we speak?
Are we even real priests?
Do you speak on your own authority or on God's? This is the question. How can you ask a priest if you're not sure which one they are?
Right.
And really, I mean, when I take this thing off, I don't even have, it's just.
It's like the power goes out of you. Yeah.
Really, I don't even know anything anymore. Can I tell them what happened?
Yes.
So listen, and I know that if you're with us, you generally don't care what we wear. But I do have a hope that as we continue to have these conversations, that people that are maybe not as connected to the church will see people in collars being not terrible people and answering questions with some semblance of, I hope, humility and grace, and go, oh, maybe people in collars aren't the worst. That's kind of one of my goals. So that's one of the reasons why I think we wear them in that formal capacity. That being said, it's my family, it's my kids' spring break. And while I cannot be on vacation this week, I've got too much going on right before Holy Week. I grabbed the kids and took them up to a well-known Ohio retreat called Hocking Hills. So we are up in Hocking Hills today, which is a couple hours north of Cincinnati in the hill country, just in the foothills of Appalachia, I believe. And I forgot my collar. It's that simple. I messaged Kira and I was like, I'm going to be collarless tomorrow, so I don't want you to show up overdressed. So it's casual Friday or it's casual Wednesday on Ask a Priest today.
It's Tuesday, right?
It is Tuesday. Oh, geez. It's casual Tuesday. I know what day it is. Do you? I didn't know.
Barely.
Tuesday. Yeah. So time is a flat circle. Good morning, Betsy. Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Leslie. And good morning, Kathy, and all who are with us but haven't notified that you're here yet, or if you're listening later. My friend Gina's probably going to be listening to this later, and Emily. So good morning to everyone who's a part of our show. And good morning to you, Kira.
Good morning to you, Phil. I'm a little bit jealous of at least you being able to get away.
Yes.
Little change of scenery.
Yes. It's jealousy inducing, no question. It's so stressful. It took us 4.5 hours to get somewhere that's 2 hours away.
Oh no.
That's what it's like to travel with this crew. And the dog threw up in the car on the way up here.
Oh.
Which we didn't realize till we got here.
Oh no.
There was a lot that happened. But So I'm just trying to make you less jealous. But honestly, we are fortunate to be in the beauty of nature, and I'm in a little farmhouse up in the woods, and we'll go for some hikes later. The kids are about to go fishing in a fishing hole out back, just like one does.
Just giving them the real rural experience.
Which I know nothing of. I'm like, Krista's like, we should take them fishing. And I was like, cool, you'll have to teach them.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. It's not passive aggressive. I'm not against it. I just don't know. You throw the thing and I could teach them about the nature of the Trinity.
Right.
But not fishing.
Yeah.
Teach a man to, as the saying goes, teach a man to fish and he'll immediately become more useful than Philip DeVaul. That is the old adage.
The old saw.
Right.
Well, we've got some questions, and they really dovetail quite nicely with what you and I are spending a lot of time doing, which is preparing for Holy Week and Easter this year.
Yeah. Yes.
So how's that going?
Well, that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. Here's the thing. So we have based our regathering plans in terms of indoors worship on the color coding system of our public health for the state. And we are currently in the color red, which is the second highest color. Did you know there was something higher than red?
Is it like dark red?
It's purple.
It's purple.
Which is fair, because if you had something red on your arm and then it turned purple, you'd go to the doctor.
Yeah.
So I think I actually think that's a really fair like color coding. Yeah. But we're red, and I really thought that, and if we're orange, we can meet in person indoors. But we need 10 days preparation. So they make the announcement on a Thursday. Okay. And Thursday to Sunday is too quick a turnaround to do the things we have to do for registrations and getting people ready.
Yeah.
So if it's red on a specific Thursday, then that means then the Sunday after, exactly 10 days later, we'll have church indoors. I really thought we were going to be in orange.
Yeah, I know you
last
kind of
Thursday. I thought we were going to be in person indoors by Palm Sunday, and we didn't. And then I thought, well, maybe we will turn to orange this Thursday and be in person indoors for Easter, which is both amazing and terrible. Amazing because of the glory of the resurrection, and isn't it great to be together? Terrible because our first day back, all of the logistics to try to make it happen on Easter are nerve-wracking.
Yeah. But
totally worth it, friends. If it happens, we're in. We're going to do it, and we're going to smile, and it's going to be great. Okay. But I've heard recently that although we don't know for a fact, we're probably not going to go to orange even this Thursday, because in fact the numbers are going up, not down right now in our area. People have gone, oh, I've got the vaccine or the first shot, or people are getting it, and the weather's nice, and spring breaks are happening, and we're seeing the numbers go up, which is just so discouraging is not a strong enough word. So it may be that we'll stay red, which is in some ways makes Easter easier. Yeah. But I'm not sure I wanted Easter to be easier. I wanted to see everybody. So we're talking about how we can have more outdoor services and invite people to worship outdoors. We may have perfect weather on Easter. Yeah. Holy Week at Redeemer traditionally, Kira, 3 Eucharists a day, Monday through Thursday. 7 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. Thursday night overnight vigil with the sacrament. Friday liturgy of the hours from noon to 3. And then a 7 p.m. Good Friday liturgy. When I got here, there was no Easter vigil, because by the time they got to Friday night, they were all beat. They couldn't do anything again. You were exhausted. But when my associate Melanie joined the team, she said, this is absurd. We have to have the Easter vigil. It's the literal best service in the book. Which of course she's right. It is. So she worked really hard, and we ended up having the liturgy 2 years ago, the Easter vigil, and it was amazing. And then last year we didn't, because we were in pandemic. And so this year we've really scaled things back. We'll have a Zoom prayer service, liturgy of the word, essentially Monday through Wednesday. Thursday we will have a Maundy Thursday Eucharist, even though we don't normally do Eucharist when no one's there, like live streamed. But since it's Maundy Thursday, the first communion, we will do that. And so we're working through all the things that we're going to do. And I think it's going to be beautiful. I think it's genuinely going to be beautiful. It just continues to not be what we thought. Yeah. Right. So that's where I'm at. So both, like, I have the ability to get away for a couple days instead of being like underwater, even though I am busy and working during this time. But also the ways that we're normally busy during this time are ways that I actually really like being busy. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword in that sense. What about you? What do you have planned? Yeah, I've been thinking a lot, because in some ways last year was easier, because like there was only so much we could do, like, because we were essentially on lockdown. Yeah. We could not gather. Right. And so we are kind of going to a hybrid, some limited indoor stuff, but mostly outdoor and live stream. So, we'll see how it goes. I'm trying to work through all the logistics. We've got a big like parish work day on Saturday to kind of clean up the grounds. And, every time I go into the church, like nobody's like really been there for a year. So just stuff has kind of like piled up. Yeah. Hasn't been dealt with. They're just like boxes. And, so just kind of like getting stuff, we're going to spend Saturday kind of getting stuff in order. And usually that's the day of the year
the Saturday before Palm Sunday, when the altar guild kind of has an all hands on deck day, and they polish the silver and replenish all the oil, and make sure everything is kind of set up for Holy Week. So it's going to be different, and we usually do an Easter vigil, and we're not going to do one this year just because I have limited
capacity.
Yeah. And usually I get somebody else to preach one of the Triduum services to kind of give myself a break. And I don't really have that option this year, kind of based on what's going on. And I've got a seminarian from Sewanee, but Sewanee is not letting their seminarians go to their field education sites. Right. Which I've written strongly worded emails about.
I think, and Sewanee's getting its fair share of strongly worded emails right now, so yours might have to might not be first shot.
Sewanee needs to just shut it down until we figure out what's going on over there.
Can a seminary just take a timeout? Like, not like timeout, go to timeout, you're in trouble. Like, you need to work some things out. Just just take a breather.
Yeah, just like take a moment.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
That's tough, man.
Yeah. But I'm looking forward to it. Like, because I feel like last year I put together with, some friends, some kind of like at home liturgies. So we did kind of Maundy Thursday just at home with whoever you share a home with, or if you wanted to Zoom with another household or FaceTime in with another household. And I literally just cried through like the entire our like agape dinner at home, and I like took the time to like make, we had like a simple dinner of salad and soup and bread, and I started like saying the opening prayer and was just like just a total mess because I missed those liturgies so much. I'm really hopefully looking forward to next year when things are, this is like
2022, 2022. It is better than next year. Yeah.
Because at least we're able to gather in some capacity. I heard a really good, a friend of mine used a really good metaphor for kind of what's going on right now in this sort of like, imagine that you're at the seashore, and some people right now are ready to like just jump right in the ocean. Like, they're ready to like be in person, be doing all the things. Maybe they're vaccinated, fully vaccinated, they're ready to go. And then there are a few people that like, they just kind of want to sit on the shore, they want to sit in the sand, they want to sit on the shore for a little while. And maybe over time they'll kind of like dip their feet in, they'll wade in a little bit.
Right.
And we've got some people that are kind of like, I'll wade in up to my knees.
Right.
I'll, people kind of have different, even not depending on their vaccination status, but they have different kind of boundaries and comfort levels of where they're at with being in semi-large groups or being indoors with people they don't share a household or a bubble with. And, I'm trying to be sensitive to that because it's certainly an issue for me as well. Like,
I was going to say, and also you're one of those people.
I know. Yeah.
Like, the thing that I love about everything you just said, Kira, and you're like, what? Okay. And I'm going to compliment and flatter you for a moment, if you don't mind. Like, one of my favorite things about you as a priest is you are so good at so clearly owning your priesthood and your understanding of yourself as the person called to do this work. And also in a way that you always also are very insistent on your own humanity. And that these things aren't separate. And that, by the way, humanity can sometimes be used as a pejorative. Not at all. Like, our humanity, we are humans. And you've done two things in this conversation that are so important for me. One is the very first thing that you said was like, you described this beautiful thing and then said, we're not doing it because I don't have the bandwidth. Y'all, I hope y'all heard that. That's real honesty from your clergy. And like, we're you, we don't have the bandwidth for everything right now. And we're pushing ourselves really hard, and that's okay. Like, we don't I don't think either of you or me wants people to feel sorry for us or
No.
go like, we're not asking for extra attention. We're not asking for I'm not even asking for a pat in the back. We're literally just making sure everyone's on the same page, that we all understand that we're human and that we're doing our best during a difficult time. Like literally. And there are things that we're not going to offer that we feel bad about not offering.
Yeah.
And but it's requiring us to be honest about our limitations. And that actually is a really healthy thing, because we have, both you and I, and many of us have actually seen clergy who don't acknowledge limitations and either do destructive things towards others or just burn themselves out.
Yeah.
Which is destructive in another way.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful for you just saying like, I don't have the bandwidth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you just described this whole picture. I love this. You've given me this imagery of like, where I'm going to jump into the water, or I'm going to wait, or, okay, so I'm going to tell you who I am. And then I want to know who you are. Like,
Okay.
You know who I am? I'm the guy who goes, I'm going to go jump in the water right away. And then you're like, so go for it. And I'm like, I'm gonna. You're like, no, Phil didn't jump in the water. I'm jumping. You're not in there yet. No, I just wait. I'm looking at the water, and not everybody else wants to jump yet. So I'm just trying to be sensitive to other people. I don't want to show off on the jumping. I'll jump tomorrow. I'll jump tomorrow. That's me. I might have a toe in the water, but I talk a big game about all the things I'm ready to do, and I don't know that I'm being honest about what I'm ready for.
Mm-hmm.
Which one are you? Which person are you in the metaphor?
Yeah, I feel like I'm the kind of person that's like, okay, like, what are we doing? Where are we at? Are we gonna go and like splash around in the water and like have a grand old time? Or hey, do we want to just like drink and listen to music and sunbathe? Like, that's cool with me too. So
that's how you are with your church.
Yeah.
How are you in yourself?
In life? Oh gosh. I think I'm kind of like, right now, I'm definitely on, like, I'm like maybe knee deep into the water. I think you saw this on Facebook, but my husband and I went to our first live art performance on Friday, and we felt very comfortable doing that because this is an organization in Nashville that is very supportive of new art. This was in particular like kind of a modern dance performance, and they had like 5 performances a night. It was a 35-minute show. Everyone, you weren't even seated. It's in like a big warehouse, and so there were different spots for like each different vignette in the performance, and then you kind of like wandered around, and there were markers where that were like 8 feet between parties, and there were like only 20 people besides the performers in this huge warehouse. And it really kind of made me feel like, okay, yeah, like the church, obviously, I mean, I obviously knew this, but the church is not the only one trying to get creative, trying to figure out how to do the things that we love to do, that we want to do together, but do it in a way that accounts for the current reality of being in a pandemic. And like, even if you're fully vaccinated, like not everybody is. Like, we're still in a pandemic. Like,
people are still dying.
Still
getting sick. We still can't do sick. Yeah. And as Leslie said, there are the people who don't like sand and are skeptical of going to the beach at all until maybe when they get the chairs set up.
Yeah.
That's my wife. Like, that's Krista. She's like, I didn't even want to go in the water in the first place.
Yeah.
Jump back in. Well, put some chairs over there and have some daiquiri service and an umbrella, and I might show up.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys got to do that, and it is beautiful to see. I haven't done anything like that.
Yeah. I was so overwhelmed with like gratitude during the performance. Just gosh, this is the first like live in-person art that I've seen in like over a year, and that they were able to do the things to make that possible was really great.
I love
it. It was just really and gratifying. Again, like, because because this is already an organization that is supportive of like creativity and new ways of kind of doing things, they had a really flexible space. So they have a giant warehouse. Normally it's set up with like bleachers and kind of, chairs in rows and stuff. And this was just a huge open space. So
yeah. You remind me, I was watching the stand-up on Netflix this week, Nate Bargatze.
Tennessee guy.
Yeah. And really, there are a lot of comedians that are brilliant that I don't know that we'd actually have fun hanging out together, but they're brilliant. But I'm like, this is a guy, I'm like, he and I could hang out, actually. It turns out we would be about the same speed. We'd be like, want to watch TV? Yeah, let's watch TV. But he did a recent stand-up special and he's talking about 2020 and it's clearly new. And I'm like, he's not, and I'm like, how is he doing this? And then they cut to the like audience and they're all spaced and masked and it's outdoors. Mm-hmm. And so there's 3 different times during the performance when helicopter goes over and he has to stop talking because it's too loud for the helicopter going over. And I was like, oh, wow. Like they're thinking carefully. He's like, I'm going to do a show, but it's going to be different. And he talked about how he'd been doing stand-up like in a drive-in theater and like trying different things.
Yeah. How
can we provide what we do and how can we be a part of this thing in a different way? Right? Really cool stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what is hard about doing Holy Week in a pandemic is that it is going to be different.
Yeah.
And I think there is as much grief on my end that it has to be different than there is like concern that people won't like it because it's different.
So I think the hardest thing for me, and I bet you relate to this, is when people ask the question, like, when are we going to be back? Or like, sort of like, they kind of put it on us, like we'd be back if you guys would just let us know when we could be. Mm-hmm. It creates this dynamic that suggests perhaps we're not dying inside from missing the things that we want to be doing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a professional guy who does Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday services, who doesn't get to do that.
It's like my big week of the year.
Right. Right. And it's the best. People always like try to figure out what Christmas and, Holy Week, Easter, like which one's the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I always say Christmas is the Super Bowl and Easter is the World Series because Christmas is one day.
Yeah.
But Easter is like a whole season. It's almost like March Madness.
Yeah.
It goes on for a while if you count Lent, and then you've got Holy Week, and then it finally accumulates in this big event. And anyways, so I'm so glad you brought all that up.
Yeah, but I want to get to Kathy's question because so one thing to say is that Holy Week traditionally has been a time of intense fear for our Jewish friends and siblings, because there is almost always an uptick in violence against Jewish people during Holy Week.
Which is insane, but totally accurate.
Yes. Yeah. So do you want to read her question?
Sure. I thought you were about to, but I
was like, where is it?
Both of us have to pretend we're ready for that. I got it. I'm ready. So, what's that? Awesome. Thank you. So, hold on. I had it. And then my, everything's dying on my phone right now. Okay, here we go. Seriously, I might need a new phone. All of my apps are shutting down.
Okay, I got it. If you want.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So here's the sort of prelude to the question. Amy Jo Levine preached at the National Cathedral several weeks ago. She talked about the efforts underway to explore portions of the New Testament that some see as anti-Semitic, specifically the passage from John used on Good Friday. She also said the passage from Corinthians used that Sunday was problematic to some. How do we faithfully explore texts that are offensive to some? So in full disclosure, Dr. Levine was one of my professors at Vanderbilt Divinity School.
Wow. That's awesome.
So I kind of have the like straight from the horse's mouth take on some of
I have so many questions for you offline now.
Yeah. And I actually took a class with her about Jewish Christian relations.
Yeah.
Which was very, very formative and helpful in my pastoral ministry, and which is not to say that I don't still make mistakes and mess things up. But the long tradition of Christian violence against Jewish people is something that we have to be, as preachers and as priests in 2021, we have to be very mindful of.
Yes.
Because we aren't reading these texts historically without, millennia of bad actors.
Right. We're not in a vacuum here.
Yeah, we're not in a vacuum. We're dealing with the history of not only most recently the Holocaust. I say most recently, but that in terms of big,
just in terms of
big
massive
world events. But pogroms, the Crusades, just anti-Jewish rhetoric and literature, and even like Martin Luther, the reformers, have
totally
horrible anti-Jewish and anti-Semitic parts of their writing. So we can't look at those texts, even if we want to say like this wasn't the original intention of the author. They're dealing with a particular situation when John is writing his gospel, which is true, but we can't ignore the 2 millennia of Christian-Jewish relations in the meantime.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but in the last few years for Good Friday, I put a little memo but at the beginning of the bulletin.
Yeah.
That is from Bishop Christer Stendal, that basically acknowledges the reality of Holy Week being a dangerous time for Jewish people, the way that the Gospel of John can inflame those tensions.
Yep.
Because of the way the Gospel of John uses the term the Jews, or what gets translated as the Jews.
Right.
And that has led to violence against Jewish people. And that as Christians, we are responsible for acknowledging that, repenting of that, and doing better.
Yeah. And I know we've used that something. I know we've used that preface before. I don't know if it's uniform for every Good Friday, but if it isn't, it should be. And you should definitely send that to me to make sure I have that. Because I agree. So the question, how do we preach on these things, or on texts that might be offensive? First and foremost, I preach on them, and I teach on them. So one thing I don't do is avoid them, because I don't think that's appropriate at all for us to abdicate responsibility or pretend that it's not there and move to the side. Like we don't want to, we want to make sure that we don't, I would say, cede ground to anti-Semitic voices and sentiments within our faith tradition. I'm not comfortable with that at all. And it is a matter of our formation. We have a responsibility for good Christian formation to teach people the context of the writings. And sometimes that isn't preachable, because how much time can you devote to it?
Right.
And do you want every single Good Friday to be about that?
Yeah.
But
that's part of the struggle. And that's why that, like, putting the bulletin.
Right. Look, this is here.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about other things, but we can always talk about that. I've led 2 different churches through Bible studies on the letter to the Hebrews, which is one of my favorite books of the Bible, and is a book that historically has been used as as supersessionist to great anti-Semitic effect. And so I love doing that Bible study, because I get to show people why it's not anti-Semitic, how it's deeply Jewish in its understanding. But also be honest about how it's been used, so that we can confront both. Because part of what we've got to do is confront the reality of bigotry as it's arisen historically in the church, but also how it arises within us as we in our own daily lives, like how I tend towards bigotry, where my anti-Semitism pops up whether I want it to or not. Because if you ask me if I'm anti-Semitic, I'd say no. I'm rabidly pro-Semite. Actually, I'm especially a lot of I'm very I get very defensive when some of our Episcopal colleagues sort of speak poorly of the state of Israel. I get really nervous about that, not because they're necessarily wrong about a specific point, but about a lot of the rhetoric that immediately goes with that, or a lot of the assumptions that are made about Israelis and about the Jewish people. I get it. It can sometimes, I get very protective. And at the same time, I'm perfectly capable of anti-Semitic sentiment in my heart or bigotry in my heart. So I'm not divorced from that. So the more that we talk about it and acknowledge how it's been present, the more we're able to acknowledge when it creeps up in ourselves and where that thing is. In the text that, and I apologize, is it Dr. Levine or Levine? I want to say it correctly.
Yeah.
So Dr. Levine, the text that she's talking about in Corinthians, I preached on that text a couple weeks ago. And it's the thing where he's talking, I believe, about, Jews look for signs and Greeks look for wisdom.
Yeah.
But for those who are being saved, the crucifixion is salvation, right? Or whatever he says about that we preach Christ and him crucified, in this idea. Mm-hmm. And there's language also in that reading that Sunday from John where it talks about the Jews. And so my sermon that week, I started with talking about the context about, in both cases, Paul is a Jew talking to Jews and Gentiles, but he is a Jew who's a Roman citizen. So he is a Jew among Gentiles talking to a gathering of Jews and Gentiles who understand Jesus as a Jew who is somehow a bridge between Jews and Gentiles, even as a Jew. And then John also, and please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but my understanding as well in that case is, first of all, when the word Jews there, it's like Judeans, he's usually referring specifically to Jewish authorities in Judea, and could be translated as Judeans. But again, John also is writing as a Jew with a group of mixed Jewish people, Jewish and Gentile people. And so a lot of times, the differentiation they're making is not between Jews and Christians, but among us and God in a lot of ways. Yeah. And so I started by, it's like, look, we're not going to, the language is scary. Let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what they're trying to do. Doesn't mean we have to like it, but we can at least understand where they're coming from, because it's not the same as a 21st century Gentile white man using this language.
Right.
And so like when I use it, and when literally John the Gospeler writes it, or Paul of Tarsus writes it, it's a different thing than when I say it or you say it, right?
Yeah, and I think what's super important to remember is that most of these texts, especially in the Gospels that we're reading, are written after the fall of the temple. And yes. So when the temple was destroyed, there was a lot of intra-Jewish squabbling about what the future of Judaism was. Right. Like, what do you do with Judaism when you don't have a temple where you go and you make sacrifices and you go and like, right. That is the center of your religious life.
Right.
What do you do when it's gone? And so the sort of, I guess, I don't know what to call them, pre-Christians, or like the Jewish followers of Jesus,
yeah,
were saying, this is the future of Judaism.
Right.
This guy, Jesus.
Right.
And,
right.
Some of the other groups were saying like, no, it's about further, commitment to the law, and like really right. kind of getting back to the basics of like following the commandments and following, what God gave to us. And those were the Pharisees. Right. And so you have these different groups that are kind of arguing amongst themselves. And that's the milieu in which the authors of the Gospels are telling these stories and are eventually writing them down.
Right.
So all of the kind of rhetoric against the Pharisees in the Bible, that can, here's how a lot of anti-Jewish thought presents itself in those of us in the main line. Here's what will happen. There's a story, and it's about the Jews or the Pharisees do X, and then Jesus comes by and does Y.
Thank you. Go. Yeah, I already love where you're going, and you're not even there yet. Keep going. I'm in.
And so here is what preachers will do, and I have to watch myself for this tendency as well, to go, well, the X thing that the Jews or the Pharisees or whoever were doing was bad, and Jesus shows us the real way yep. to live, and
yep.
Shows us the true meaning of Scripture, the Bible, yep. or what this thing was meant to be about, which completely divorces Jesus from his Jewishness.
His Jewishness.
um, you know,
I wrote that sermon in seminary and got my ass handed to me, and I deserved it. And it was like, guys, the moment she pointed it out, because again, I felt the same way then that I feel now, like in terms of like, I don't at all ever want to be anti-Semitic. I just not at all where my head is. The moment she pointed it out, I saw it. Like, it wasn't like I was like, what do you mean? I looked at it and I was like, oh God, like I did that. Like oh, I did the thing.
Yeah.
I did the thing. Okay, well, we got to rewrite this thing. And I hadn't preached it yet publicly, thank God. It was for a class.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that my instructor showed it to me, I was like, oh, I'm so capable of that, you know?
Yeah, well, and of course, you know, because we as Christians, we see Jesus as doing this new thing, doing this liberative, life-giving, like
Right.
bringing grace and love and all of these wonderful things into the world, that sometimes we can pit that against, those, you know,
those Jews,
legalistic Jews.
Yeah. Oh, the stiff-necked. It's so problematic. It's true. And by the way, here's the line that we should walk, that we're supposed to walk. Did Jesus introduce something new to the picture? Yes, we believe he did.
Yes, we as Christians believe he did.
We don't get to say, I don't buy into like, well, it's all just the same, and Jesus was just doing what was already done. No, he did something that the people around him decided he needed to die for. Right. And we believe as Christians that he is the Messiah, by the way. I mean, this is where we always have to be really clear and careful. We believe that Jesus is the Messiah of Israel. And modern day Jews do not ascribe to that belief. And that is a difference of belief. We believe different things about who Jesus is and different things about what God has done and is doing in the world. And at the same time, we have to work on what mutual respect, love, and care and learning from one another looks like within that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also have to say, modern day Christianity and modern day Judaism are not what is presented in our scriptures. It was a different time in a different context and different characters. And so in John, when it says the Jews, it doesn't mean the person, your next door neighbor, or the guy down the street.
The synagogue down the street.
Right, exactly, right. I got my dog in the room with me and he's being a little fussy, so I'm going to mute it for just a second.
Yeah, and I know we've kind of taken this in a direction that is sort of specifically about anti-Semitism and anti-Judaism, and the broader question of like, how do we deal with texts that kind of sound offensive or are kind of knowing what we know about the world now feel difficult to interpret and to parse. And for me, a lot of that comes into my life with like, I'm working on my own ableism and the way that we use a lot of, I think we're getting it in the daily office this week with the story from John of Jesus healing the man who was blind from birth. And, how do we, he says, yeah, I once was blind, but now I see.
Right.
And that we use that metaphor a lot for our own kind of spiritual awakening in a way that like maybe isn't helpful for people who are actually
literally have a blind woman in my congregation who has said like, how do I literally, how am I supposed to handle that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, yep. Yep.
But I'm sure does it change the way you preach those readings?
Yes. And we've got to allow it to change the way we preach those readings. That's why I say we don't shy away from these things. We go forward into them and we allow ourselves to be transformed both by the text and by our community. Right? We've got to be.
Yeah.
We don't let go of it and say, well, we're just not going to read that part.
Yeah.
But the lectionary for the most part has gotten rid of a lot of that. Not the ableist part. You're right about that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the lectionary, the lectionary stays away from texts that by and large have been used historically for, I don't know, promoting slavery or misogyny and sexism. But the anti-Semitism, ableism, and there is still, I mean, there's a lot of language in Jesus' parables about slavery that need context as well. Mm-hmm. And understanding how to hear those and talk about those is something that we have to talk about it. I'm of the opinion that if there's something in a text that when you read it, you realize that it's like that, you know that people are going to wonder about it, mm-hmm. you damn well better talk about it in your sermon. Or they will think that you gave up. They will think you took the easy route. Even, and I one of my associates, Joyce, she handled this so masterfully. She preached the other day, and it had the text from Deuteronomy where God sends the venomous serpents to people. And someone actually pointed out the Bible can't be inerrant because it says poisonous serpents, but serpents aren't poisonous, they're venomous. So it's actually, we've got some issues there scientifically. But anyways, and now here's the deal. Let's be honest, friends. You don't remember all our sermons. So the problem is, if every single time that text comes up, I have to explain to you why God would do that, I'd have to preach the same sermon every year or every couple of years because you wouldn't remember it a couple of years later and you'd go, why did God do that? And I can't just say, I told you that already.
Yeah.
Right?
Or if someone's new to the congregation or...
No, you're much kinder than I am. I'm being mean. But you're right. I mean, are we going to preach the same thing every time? Or are we going to get rid of it every time? So it was fascinating. My friend, my associate Joyce, she was preaching on this and she said, she started it out by talking a little bit about that. And she said, look, this text brings up deeper and even more troubling issues that need to be discussed. But that's not what this sermon is about. I need to talk to you about something else. So if you want to discuss that later, great. But here's what we're going to talk about. But within her sermon, she's like, at least she said, this part's weird. You don't know how to deal with it. We've got other things to talk about today. My door is open. Here's the weird stuff. Yeah. I think that's a really healthy, you can't do that every time. Sometimes you got to go right at the hard stuff, the weird stuff. Yeah. The hard stuff. But if you're not going to go after it when it's there, and there are many times very legitimate pastoral reasons not to, or strategic reasons not to, you at least have to acknowledge it and go. And that's what I did a couple weeks ago when I was like, my whole sermon isn't just about the language of Jew and Greek.
Right.
But if I don't talk about it, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's important to me.
Yeah, I think, that's a good point because one of the struggles for kind of contemporary church engagement in the main line is that we are asking our sermons to do a lot of work.
Heavy lifting in terms of Christian formation.
Yes. And so that is,
Can you elaborate on that? I agree, by the way. Can you say more?
So, I think for a lot of us, and I certainly grew up this way, gone are the days of like, you were at church on Wednesday night and you went to Christian formation on Sunday morning, and then you went to church and you maybe, had some kind of Bible study or something in the middle of the week. And nowadays, most people, if they're going to come to church, regular church attendance is like once a month.
Yep. Twice a month is what someone says. I attend church regularly. In generations above us, they meant 3 to 4 Sundays a month. Mm-hmm. And now they mean 1 to 2 Sundays a month.
Yes.
Same language. I attend church regularly means once to twice a month tops.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, no. And so we're seeing less less of people. And right. So a lot of the times we are trying to do a lot in our sermon. We're trying to unpack the scriptures. We're trying to give you, we're trying to like educate and not educate in a like didactic way, but yeah, what does it mean if, what does it mean about God that he sent these serpents to the Israelites? Like, that's a great Bible study question.
Yeah.
It is.
It's a great Bible study question that is so much of the gospel according to John is phenomenal Bible study that does not translate. I know you're talking about Deuteronomy, or Leviticus. I don't want to preach on Leviticus, but I'll teach on Leviticus.
Yeah.
Let's do a Leviticus Bible study. Let's spend 6 months in it. That's fine.
And also in our sermon, we want, at least I do, I want you to take away, like, this is how this applies to my life. This
Right.
is the way that the gospel might inspire me or influence me or, convict me to do something different in the week ahead.
Yep.
I want that out of my sermons. So as much as sometimes I would almost prefer or find it easier to like give you a 10 to 15 minute lecture on the passage. What some of my guiding questions are always like, what is the good news in this passage?
Yes.
And like, what do I want somebody who listens to this sermon, like they're kind of like one sentence takeaway from this sermon to be?
That's right. I agree.
So we're trying to do a lot. And and a lot of times I'm also trying to like educate about the liturgical year, because I don't have a lot of like cradle Episcopalians or people who maybe know a lot about kind of our liturgy or our rhythm of worship. So we're trying to do a lot in like not a lot of time, because we just don't get to see you all, and it's not like, all of our parishioners are bad because they don't come to Bible study. It's just everyone's lives are so much busier than they were 50 years ago. And it's hard to make that time. Yeah. And I think one of the benefits actually of our current pandemic way of doing ministry is we've had a lot more people join book groups and join Bible studies because they meet on Zoom.
Yep.
And I think that's a great medium for those activities in the church going forward, because it means you don't have to drive across town in fighting traffic on a Wednesday afternoon to come to Bible study.
Right. And I get that we have colleagues that are like, well, people should just orient their lives differently. I mean, okay. And in the meantime, what? I mean, there's another tension there, right? How much do we ask people to commit more? And how much do we just meet people where they are and say, this is what it is? And I remember one time I was working with my vestry. I think you'll appreciate this. I was working with my vestry a little over a year ago, because it's before the pandemic, and it's been a year. So it was a little over a year ago, might have been a year and a half ago, and was talking about, just working through some things in the church and asking their advice. I want to make sure that I'm not just making blanket decisions, but that they're part of it. And I hear some things that we could do. And one of my vestry members said, Phil, you're the only one in here in the room that's paid to be here and is doing this as a full-time job. This is not our full-time job, and we're volunteers. And she wasn't admonishing me like, don't ask us to do things. It was literally more like, you have a perspective we don't have. We appreciate you asking us for input, but also make sure you give us your input, because this is your whole thing. And like, we can, as professional, I like to call myself a professional Christian. As a professional Christians can have the capacity to lose perspective of what it's like to be a non-professional Christian in the world.
Yeah.
What does it look like to be a devoted Christian in the world if you're not a professional church person? Where does it fit into your life? How do you help it shape your life? What's the right amount of giving up certain things for church, and what's the right amount of giving up certain church things for the rest of your life? Those are tough questions, right? So, and as Leslie pointed out, Leslie grew up at Redeemer, but she's in Vancouver, not Vancouver, Ohio. And she's able to join us for Ask a Priest, and she's been a faithful member of our Bible study for the last few months, and that's because of the way that we're doing things right now.
Yeah.
My dog really wants to get out of this room, and I'm nervous to let him out but no, you got to stay here, pal. We brought him on this trip, and he's really unsettled. He's like, this isn't my house. Where is everybody? What's going on? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
And he's looking at me like really annoyed.
What are you doing?
Yeah, so sorry for that if you hear him whining in the background. He's okay, guys. He's what?
He's so handsome, though.
He's a handsome fella. That covers a multitude of sins. But he's literally like this, like looking at me like, what's the problem?
Oh.
The problem is nothing. Just sit down. Just lie down, buddy. What else do we want to say? You know what I want to ask you is, do you either have good resources or have you ever attacked sort of some of the more traditionally sexist and misogynistic aspects of scripture from your perspective as a faithful Christian leader who reads scriptures and leads a church and ordained ministry, which many Christian traditions would say is impossible?
Yes.
Like either is there, I mean, I've got like, there's that Counter Traditions in Scripture book by Alana Partis, and there's a really wonderful feminist theological approach to the book of John that I really love. But neither of those, well, but is there something either from someone, a practitioner like you, or have you ever personally done any work like publicly with your church or in other places where you really go delve into those spaces?
There was a time when I sort of did, when I was like really interested in kind of like proving, I don't know, to the world or myself that like this thing in the Bible that says X like doesn't really mean what you think it does, or how it gets used against like women clergy or whatever. And I know, my LGBTQ friends have done the same thing. They've just intensely like studied the kind of so-called clobber verses that are used against LGBTQ people, and gone, become experts in those things. And a few years ago, I stopped. I just like, if somebody comes at me with like, well, this is what 1 Timothy says. Yeah, I know. I don't care.
Right.
Like, I know what the Bible says. I am also part of a tradition that has been ordaining women for 50 years now.
Right.
I went to seminary. I went through a parish discernment committee. I went through a diocesan discernment committee. I went in front of the bishop.
Right.
I took exams. I did all of these things. And all of these people decided that I was called to be a priest in God's church. And so like, I don't care
not
what
my job.
Random guy says on the internet. Like, I have proven myself to the people who matter, and the people who I care about believe that I am a priest and I am called to be a priest in God's church, and I inhabit my priesthood because I am a woman. Like, I inhabit my priesthood in a particular way.
They're inextricably linked.
Yeah.
Your priesthood and your womanhood are one. You can't take one from the other, or maybe not one, because if you decided not to be a priest anymore, you'd still be a woman. But like, like they're not. Your priesthood has to be informed by your being a woman. Has to be. Yeah.
And so like, I don't know what it's like to be a priest and like not be a woman. So, yeah, so I just kind of, I just stopped caring, honestly, and was just kind of like, this is what my church says, and this is what all of the people I went in front of and told my story and told how God was moving in my life said. And 2 bishops, one for my ordination to the diaconate and one for my ordination to the priesthood, like laid their hands on my head and said, here's the Holy Spirit.
Abracadabra. No, I agree. I appreciate you saying that too. I try to think about, I'm always trying to think, you make me realize, Kira, I'm always trying to think about how to defend where I've come to from where I was. Mm-hmm. And I'm always trying to think about how to make sure to argue for the kind of inclusive understanding of the gospel that you're presenting and that you're living and that we hope we're living together. But in some cases, what I'm trying to do is please people who are never going to be pleased, or prove that I'm smart enough to a group of people who are never going to who are going to end up thinking that I'm wrong anyway, and probably wrong in a way that sends me to hell.
Exactly.
And like, so like to have the, you know, on one hand, but I also, as a cis het white male, I definitely also want to not abdicate my responsibility to know these texts back and forth. Like, I don't think gay people should be the only people who know those texts back and forth to defend themselves, or that women should have to be the only people who know those texts back and forth to defend themselves, or that African Americans should be the only people who know the texts about slavery back and forth to defend themselves. Like, that's not fair culturally. To place the burden. So I was asking the question in terms of like representation, like in terms of like what female voices might be helpful, but or if that's interesting, but at the same time, it should not be your added responsibility to do that work.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are wonderful, wonderful books. I would recommend Dr. Will Gaffney's work. She has a book on female prophets in the Old Testament, and also her Womanist Midrash book. She mostly deals with Old Testament stuff, but you know, then like, how do you again, like a lot of these arguments, like I'm not gonna argue with these people who are, you know, committed to misunderstanding me. Like they're not going to be convinced by my argument. So to me, I do a lot of focusing in my preaching and otherwise on just lifting up the women who are in the Bible and their like faithfulness and their, you know, I think that's one of the important things about the Marys to me. You know, in some ways we can understand Mary Magdalene as the first preacher of the gospel because she is there at the empty tomb and then goes on to tell the disciples, and even understanding there's a kind of more Catholic understanding of Mary, the mother of God, as the first priest, because she kind of makes Jesus, you know. She
you think about what priests are supposed to do. She did that thing.
So that's an important understanding for me of my priesthood. But I mean, I would say, I guess I would encourage people, you know, particularly white cishet men, to know to be able to argue that on behalf of their women colleagues, you know, their female colleagues, on behalf of their LGBTQ friends, parishioners, whoever, you know, to be able to do that, because, you know, sometimes people will listen to you that won't listen to us, or it'll feel different coming from you.
Well, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, there's a balance too. Like, oh, of course, like.
Right. It is a tricky thing. I hope that I model. My goal is to model what it looks like for a guy like me to get out of the way. To both lead and get out of the way. Because I have been put in a position of leadership. Can I lead people into getting out of the way of others and allowing others' voices to be heard? Can I lead into a place that is not about my own promotion and my own self-centered desires, but towards a larger understanding of the sort of generosity of God's presence in the world, right? That it's found in all these places that our church oftentimes has not found it or not chosen to see it, which goes back to the initial question. Can we help people see God's presence and grace in places that have traditionally, we haven't seen God's presence or grace there? And in our culture right now, that so often is about seeing it outside of a straight white paradigm, a straight white male paradigm, right? So, and I'm a straight white male. So how do I participate in that work?
Yeah.
You know? And it's just messy, and we just do the best we can and try to create relationships and participate in our communities, both church community and broader community, in ways that hopefully do lift the appropriate people up and create spaces for that kind of equity and sort of generosity of understanding. That's my hope.
Yeah, I think my hope as well is that the church can model what it looks like to learn and to change and to know better and then try to do better.
Yep.
And when we slip up, when we haven't, or we just don't know, or we haven't considered something, that the church is a place where we can call people in to considering those perspectives rather than like calling them out and putting them on blast. And I mean, I'm critical of the kind of like term cancel culture, but I do think we're all on a journey, we're all learning, we're all trying to be more graceful and loving and follow Jesus more closely. And doing that, means that like we mess up sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And it's totally, I've been kind of like, I've done things before and people are like, hey, this maybe like isn't that cool. And I feel terrible. Like I feel awful. It's not fun. It's not a good feeling. But it's part of growth, and growth isn't fun sometimes.
No, do you literally remember waking up in the middle of the night when you were a child and your legs hurt from growing?
Yeah.
And you went into your parents' room and were like, I'm in pain. And they were like, describe it. And you did. And they were like, oh, those are growing pains. Go back to bed. And you were like, hold on, what? Yeah, your body hurts from growing. What do I do? You just go back to bed. Hold on. Right? Like, but that's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I had wrist issues, like the growth plates in my wrist.
Oh, wow.
Awful. As a teen.
So we got to wrap it up. I love what Leslie said. You do what you think is best and be open to conversation and actually listen when the people affected come to you with criticism or ideas, and you change to include their input. And that's the best you can do. And I hope that we're doing that. And I appreciate that's really good language, and your thoughtfulness around this is really helpful. We were going to do another question from Kathy, and of course we did not get to it. I do think we need a whole day to talk about the prayer of humble access, though.
Yeah. Which
most of the people who are paying attention to this are like, the what and who cares? We care. It's the church nerdiest thing in the world to care about the prayer of humble access. But it's a big deal and we've got to talk about it. So if you want to look at page 337 in your prayer book, and we'll talk, and this is your homework if you're listening.
It's your homework.
Book of Common Prayer, bottom of page 337. It is a prayer that begins, we do not presume to come to this thy table, O merciful Lord. We do not presume. Look for that prayer, and we're going to discuss it. Because some people love it and other people are me. And I'd love to have that discussion.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's have it.
I find myself in a different position than most of the Christians I agree with about a lot of things on this particular text. And so we should talk about that at some point. Friends, we will be here next week, but not the week after, or no?
Yes, we will be here next week, which is Tuesday and Holy Week.
And we may talk about the prayer of humble access, unless you have other things you want to talk about. If you guys send us some emails of things that are more pressing about Holy Week.
Yeah, if you have any questions about Holy Week, why we do some things, why we don't do others, what's the deal, what is the Triduum?
You said that earlier, and I was like, are we going to talk Triduum talk? Fancy church words. Or we'll talk about the prayer of humble access, but then we are going to take the Tuesday after Easter off.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, my friend. What have you been listening to this week?
So are you familiar with Lake Street Dive?
I am.
Yeah. So they have a new album out.
Oh, cool.
And I have been jamming to that. I think she's one, like the lead singer is maybe one of my favorite vocalists
She's got a gorgeous voice.
currently
Absolutely
active.
gorgeous voice. I found out recently that she's Baha'i.
Oh, really?
I know. I did not know that until very recently. They're great. I need to know them better. So I will check out that on your recommendation. I keep going backwards and listening to just stuff. I've been really in a place of listening to music that I've already been listening to.
Yeah.
Right. So it's been a lot of Neil Young this week, and a lot of Velvet Underground this week. Those have been the two areas that I've sort of dove into. And then I just got on a Stevie Ray Vaughan kick.
Ooh.
Yeah, because I was like, my kids need to hear some good rock, like good guitar.
Yeah.
And he was a big deal for me when I was growing up, and so I thought I'd play some for them. And then I was like, oh, for them, for me, I'll listen to this. So, anyways, but Neil Young and Velvet Underground have been kind of zipping around in my head a lot lately. I've gotten a little Lou Reed headspace, which I think is a good Lenten. Lou Reed's good for Lent, if you ask me. If I had to do like a Lenten playlist, Lou Reed would be on it. Okay, well, we're gonna stop. 12:06. That's our normal stop time.
It's great to be with you all.
Awesome. Every time. We'll see y'all next week. Same time, same channel. All right. Thank you, Kira.